Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 987. My opponent started off with e4 and I went with e6, going for the French defense. We continue in normal lines, d4, d5, and he goes for the exchange variation with e takes d5. So I take back, and now he plays a rare move. He plays c3. There's a lot of perfectly normal moves here, knight f3, and bishop d3 are the main ones. They're good. c4 is also interesting line if you like open positions and you don't mind the isolated queen's pawn. But c3, it's it's a way to get out of the book quickly, and it's not terrible. You often want to play that c3 move anyway, just a bit slow. So you go knight f6, and he goes bishop g5. Not the top choice either, but there's not many games in the database here. So in fact, we're just out of the book at this point. Yeah, I think instead of knight f6, there was a suggestion of playing c5. Yeah, this was in the opening book. And he might follow up with knight f3, knight c6, and bishop to b5 playing this way, and bishop d6 here. I don't know, it's an interesting kind of position. He can take the pawn there, give me an isolated pawn. It's kind of like a reverse Slav defense. White's playing a Slav defense, and I've got these two pawns up here, although there's been an exchange. Yeah, I don't know what to call this. Anyway, this seems to be okay for white. So the way that I played it, I didn't play c5 here. I just went knight f6. That seems to be one of the better moves there. c5 was also okay. Anyway, in bishop g5, he could play more solidly with bishop to d3 or knight f3. I still recommend those two moves over bishop g5. I get to gain a little bit of tempo, kicking the bishop around here. Let's see, I played bishop e7. He went knight f3, and I went h6, and he decided to take. He could have retreated. It's not a big deal. It's when he takes, he gives me the bishop pair, but my bishop turns out to be a little awkwardly placed here on f6. So I can't say either one of those moves seems to be about the same, and these positions seem to be about equal. It kind of goes back and forth in the evaluation of the chess engine. Anyway, he plays bishop d3, so I finally got these two pieces on their logical squares. He could have just done that a bit quicker, and he saddled me with this bishop on f6, which may be a strength or a weakness. It remains to be seen. He castled. Oh, it's my turn. I castled. He castled. And then I played bishop g4. And so basically the evaluation has kind of gone back and forth, but it's in the range of about even all the way through up to this point. I can't say anyone has made any mistakes. So queen b3 is the first real mistake here, although it's kind of subtle. I mean, so the natural move is knight b to d2, and that's best and keeps it in the range of about even. This is a mistake, and then my response to it is a mistake. I just didn't want him taking that pawn on b7 and attacking my rook there. But the chess engine says I can actually take this knight, and this is good for me. So first of all, if he takes the bishop right away, I mean, I've given up the bishop pair, but then I play b6 to defend over here, and my pieces can come out on the king side, and his king side is a bit weakened. So that's good for black. But there's other choices here. He doesn't have to take the bishop right away. He can take the pawn because he's hitting by rook. I have to respond, and then he can take the bishop. But the chess engine is saying I should just play knight to b6 here, defending the center. The queen was momentarily blocked from defense of that pawn, and all these pawns are defended, and his queen is in an awkward spot. It'll take a couple moves to unwind, and so even though black is a pawn down at this point, the chess engine says black is better and gives it even a winning advantage. So that's the chess engine for you. Let's see, he goes queen a6, I go bishop g5, just to show how it might evolve a little bit. He gets the king out of the way. He's going to probably play rook to g1. I can get my queen to f6 and try and take here. And now you can see that black does have something. The knight here is out of the game, and it can't come in because the bishop controls that square. So not so easy. In fact, I think the line goes the way the line goes. White ends up giving up that pawn. If the bishop comes back to defend, then the rook can come out to attack it. So yeah, it's a tough position for white, and should be good for black. So that was how best play goes there. Anyway, I just played b6. A simple move, and we're back in the range of about even. He goes knight bd2, I go c5 here. Takes, takes. Wind that back, I took. And he played queen c2. So here he also had an opportunity to win a pawn, and this is kind of interesting. It's not winning for white or black. This position is just about even, the chess engine says. If he plays queen b7, hitting my rook, and also looking at the d-pawn. So I have to move the knight out of the way in order to defend the rook, and I can't go to these squares because the queen will take it. So the knight has to run to d7, and then he can just grab this pawn. So it's a center pawn too. So I have the bishop pair, and white is a pawn up. But the chess engine still thinks this is about even with this kind of line. So knight e5 threatens to take that bishop. The queen and the knight are coordinating, and the chess engine recommends this move: trading queens, taking the knight, and then after this, there's still a skewer here, so white has to continue to kind of scramble to unwind from this. He can play knight to c4, hitting my bishop, and then he can play f3, hitting my other bishop. The point is that if he just retreats this bishop, it'd seem like it's mission accomplished, but in fact that leaves open this possibility of bishop e2 forking the rook and the knight. So he has to keep playing like this, has to keep making threats to unwind. So he goes f3, kicking my bishop. My bishop retreats to e6, and then his bishop can drop back to e2. It's got to maintain it's got to maintain an eye on this knight, but having chased my bishop back, he's secured the e2 square for his bishop, and this position is rated as even by the chess engine. So I guess my active bishops there are enough compensation for the pawn. I can think of putting a rook on the b file here, or putting a rook here, getting a discovered attack on the bishop, leaving this guy hanging. Yeah, a lot of things could go on from this point, but the chess engine says it's even. So whereas it didn't like queen c2 as much, they thought queen b7 is what white should have played, but it's kind of a crazy line there. Anyway, now we just get some normal development here. Goes rook fe1, I go queen d7, get the rooks connected, get the queen off the back rank. He finally kicks my bishop, and I decide to just drop back here. That's the way I can put rooks on the e file behind the bishop here without trading. And then he should probably go rook a d1. That's a pretty normal move here. Instead he played bishop to b5, and it still seems that this is a little bit better for black here. After this, queen c7, he takes, I take, and he goes knight to e5, kicking my queen. Drop back to c7, he gets the knight to g4, and now I played the move bishop to e7. I was avoiding the trades. It's always hard to tell when you should give up the bishop pair and what you're getting an advantage for in exchange for it. But you know, you do often want to trade advantages at some point during a chess game, and this is that kind of position where I really should just take the knight, give up the bishop pair, and in exchange give him this slightly awkward pawn structure over here, and then the follow-up is queen f4 and knight f3. You might think f3 is a move there to defend the pawn, but it actually turns out that after f3 I can push on with d4, and it's pretty dangerous opening up that diagonal to the king. So that is good for black, and knight f3 I get my pawn back, and I keep an edge in that line too. But instead I drop my bishop back to e7, and now here's that point in the game No, here's a point in the game where he could have actually gotten a draw after this. Although it's not so easy. Let's see. But he can sack the exchange here and take on h6. This is the kind of thing I was worried about a move later in the game. And, well, I can try and avoid the draw by moving my king, but if I take the knight, then his queen comes in here with check. And that is just a draw. And avoiding the draw is probably good for white, so I really ought to go for the draw at that point. So that's how this thing can go downhill. So we're back to even, but he doesn't go for that line. He played instead. He played. Is this the point? Yeah. Okay. Instead of rook e6, he played knight f3. I put my rook over here, so he still has that sacrifice idea. Oh, I brought the f rook out. So that idea is in the air. He goes queen to d2. And here's where I played king h7. I wanted to avoid those kind of lines where I either come under attack and he gets either a win or a draw through a sacrifice against my pawns over here. So the king shores this up. He plays queen d3 and I block with g6. And then he plays queen e3. And then once again, here's a good place for the sacrifice. It's actually stronger now. I can take here. I take, and he can bring another rook in with rook e1. I have to drop my bishop back to defend, and then he goes rook e5. And the chess engine likes this for white. So I guess this is one of those reasons why I should have gotten rid of one of those knights when I had the chance. But that's a pretty speculative attack. It wasn't clear even at that final position. I mean, it looks good on the surface. All of white's pieces are attacking, so it looks like there ought to be something. And my rook is out of the way. But there's no specific line here I can give you that shows a winning attack. It just has an advantage to white in the chess engine's eyes. And it looks like a good attack there somehow. Let's see. He went with queen e3 here. And so I finally decided to take off that dangerous knight. He took back. And I played queen d7. Yeah, this is the point I wanted to look at. After queen d7, he did have knight e5, as I mentioned during the game. Instead of that, actually it wants me to play bishop f6. This is a move I considered and rejected. I was preparing bishop f6 when I played queen d7 because I wanted to protect those rooks and not give them up. But the chess engine says I should just give those rooks up. So white will have two rooks and I'll have a queen. But his rooks are split. I don't know. This is hard for me to tell who's going to be better here. The chess engine likes black a little bit for what it's worth in this position. Anyway, I went queen d7 here so I could play f6 without suffering that trade. But that allows him to play knight e5. I mentioned this during the game. He played queen f4 and I was okay after that. But knight e5... it turns out I'm still okay. White has some pressure here, but I can defend with queen e6. Let's see, he plays queen f3, go king g7. He can go knight c4, tricky move, taking advantage of the attack on my queen, but the queen can just drop back to d7 here, and it appears like there's nothing he can really do to break through. So I kind of unwind, and white has a slight edge in this position, but nothing dramatic. Instead, he played queen f4. I go bishop to d6, kicking his queen. He goes knight e5 now, but I can just trade this off. And these trades turn out to be advantageous for black because I get to bring my rook out with tempo. Let's see, the queen drops back to g3. I play rook to e4, activating all of my pieces. And now f3. This is where the tide of the game shifts. We've kind of gone back and forth where black had the advantage, white had the advantage. Both sides have been trading the advantage, but after this, black is mostly better. He could have played g5 here, and that apparently keeps things in the range of about even. Well, black is a little bit better, but f3, once again, it's a danger opening up this diagonal to the king, and black actually should go on to win this position, but Well, I don't play perfectly, so so it's no. I can't say that was a losing move. It's just that at this point, if Black was playing correctly, White should actually lose this game. Let's see. I attack the pawn. He defends. Play Queen E7. He plays Rook D1. It's counterattacking my pawn, and I come in quickly with Queen E3 check. That was rushing it a little bit. The best move here is D4, and there's this clever point here that after he takes, I take, he can't keep taking because now I can play Queen E3 check and win the rook. So so he can't take that pawn. He should move the king to the side, and then I can play Queen D8, get my queen behind the pawn. So this is one of the ways I can get a significant and probably winning advantage here. Anyway, I went in with Queen E3 check directly, and he played King F1. If he went King H2, it's still a game, and probably I no longer have a win at this point, but have some kind of pressure at least. He went King F1, and this is losing, but I have to find the move, and once again the move is D4. It's trying to exploit the my advantage of the passed pawn while his king is in a position where it has no moves, and his pieces are tied down, preventing his king from getting mated. So it doesn't matter here if he takes the pawn or pushes. I managed to push the d pawn forward either way, and he's really paralyzed here. Chess Engine is giving moves like a3 is the best he can do. I can push the pawn all the way down to the second rank, and there's no way he can organize his pieces to come around and stop me from getting to that square or even attacking that pawn, because the queen always has to guard against the mate here, and the rook has to stop the pawn from queening. Now I can't directly play rook to e1 check. That would just lead to a bunch of exchanges and it would be even. So, but I have to maneuver. Let's see. He plays b4 here. I play queen d3. Now this sets up a really dangerous discovered check here. Discovered double check. So he has to move away from that. And then I play queen to c2. And now he can no longer defend this knight. He has to move it out of the way, and I get to queen that pawn, and I'll be up material then. So that is the winning plan at this point. Starting with d4, and the idea is just to push the pawn all the way through and then do that little maneuver to win. So that's why king f1 was a mistake. He would have had a little more flexibility if the king had been over on this side and the queen was able to maneuver around and bring another attacker against the pawn. Anyway, let's see. He played king f1. I played the second best move here. Rook takes a2 is a good move. Just maintaining the mate threats and with the idea of getting both my pieces on the second rank, but not quite as strong, and gives him, I'm still winning here, but it gives him some some chances. Let's see, he plays rook e1, I go queen d3 check, goes king g1, take another pawn, plays rook e7, going for the counterattack, which is a good try from white. I defend, he plays queen f4, and here I went queen d4 check and just got the queens off. It's a little stronger to play it this way, to check here first, the king steps out of the way, and then come back, because this is a fork. It's hitting the queen, it's hitting the rook, and Chess Engine says, actually he could step the queen back and just defend, but then defend his rook, but then I'll start pushing these pawns forward again. So Chess Engine gives this as the best line, and compared to the game, my pawns are in better shape, so this would be an easier win for me compared to what I played. I went for the check immediately. I just got the queens off and went for this rook and pawn endgame, which I should be winning. But, well, it takes precision, and there is another chance here he has. So let's step forward. I keep the edge through this part. This is actually good play. I take his pawn and create an outside passer and then protect it, and then bring my king over. And then he plays rook e4. Actually, his strongest defense is to just keep bringing the king over. Say king d2. My idea was to bring my king around to defend the pawn, could bring his king over again, and then bring my rook down to the back rank. and his king is away from the pawn. My king could come forward. I'll start trying to push this rook back, and at the same time I could also come over here and counterattack these pawns if this pawn looks to be lost. So anyway, this is the kind of position I should be able to work and play for a win, but it will be a long game. He plays rook e4, which makes my life a little bit easier. Let's see. All right, here he played rook e4. I played rook b3, driving his king back. Went to f2. And then I played f5. So f5 was a mistake. I was trying to avoid the situation where he could push these pawns forward and get a passed pawn and then sacrifice his rook to stop my passed pawn. And if he gets a passed pawn over here, I might have to sacrifice my rook to stop his passed pawn, and that would just be a draw. So I was trying to avoid that by playing f5, but that was a mistake. In fact, rook b6 here is a winning idea. So defending these pawns along the second rank, or third rank. So if his rook comes here, I can, push these pawns forward and still have them defended, or maybe even bring the rook to f6. So it gives rook e5 check as the move here, king b4, just to show the winning idea from this position. Comes here to stop. The idea is to get to this square, a2. So if he checks here, I can bring my rook in to block, and then the exchange of rooks I win with the passed pawn. And now I'm just going to work this pawn forward, and at the end I will chase his rook off the back rank and get my king out and queen that pawn. So that's the plan here, and should be winning. And it's fast enough that he doesn't have time to get counterplay going over here. So f5 actually allows him, let's see, he plays this correctly. He should be able to draw this now, because he does get that scenario I was afraid of creating. He actually gets it. He gets a situation where he could create a passed pawn. So the actual losing move of the game is this next one, where he went rook h5, going for the pawn. Instead, he had to go for this other idea. So he drops the rook back to f7 now. I push my pawn forward, and he brings his rook over immediately behind it, so I don't have time to put a rook in between. Let's see, I play rook check. King comes forward. I push the pawn. King comes forward again. And, well, I'm trying to still promote this pawn. I bring my king forward. He starts pushing the f pawn. Play rook b1. He goes f6. I get a queen. He takes. I take. And then he plays king e5. And this is a draw. Let's see, I should play h5 here to stop him from bringing this pawn up. But basically I have to give up my rook to stop one of those pawns from queening, and I have to bring my king over to stop the other one. So I have to actually fight for a draw at this point. But it is a draw. So that was the way to play it, starting with rook f7 and then going over to rook a7 after the exchanges. But directly going for one more pawn is the losing move. Now I can push. He takes. I push. And he comes over. He couldn't come over earlier because my king was controlling that square. But now when he comes over, I can put the rook behind the pawn like this. And let's see, he checked my king, but I just attack his rook because he can't get in front of my pawn. So I'm going to queen one way or another. And so he resigned here, or ran out of time, I forget. Anyway, yeah, I think he resigned. Interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed this recap, and I will see you next time. Bye.